Once again, we'll be going live in 2 minutes. We ask everyone to please turn on your camera as we get ready for the live stream. Can we ask Naima as well as Stacy to please turn on your camera? We'll be going live here in about 1 minute. Now on standby.
Good afternoon to all of our online speakers, distinguished guests, and friends. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome all of you to today's online international lecture, Resilient Heritage, Bridging Local Practice with Global Perspectives. Here, I'm from the Fengjia University in Taiwan. Our team assists in promoting exchange events for ANI, and I'm going to be the host today. I'm Daphne Lai, Yuzhen Lai. We are very honored to invite experts and scholars from various fields to talk about cultural heritage resilience and preservation strategies, particularly in facing contemporary challenges from climate change and natural disasters. We will discuss how to utilize traditional wisdom and modern technology to protect our precious cultural heritage. During today's live stream session, we also welcome our listeners to leave your questions in the comment section. We will also have a Q&A session in the end. Today, we also have with us Director Chen, who has recorded this special video, a message to share with all of us. Let us now listen to his opening remarks.
也就是文化者、贵宾以及关心文化资产的朋友们，大家好，我是文化部文化资产局局长陈继明，欢迎参加今天的韧性文化资产在地经验与国际视野的国际线上讲座。亚洲产业文化资产平台，也就是 ANI， 是由本局支持的亚太遗产保存网络平台。今天的讲座，我们呼应了 ICOMOS 418文化纪念物及历史场所国际日的主题，也就是文化资产因应灾害与冲突的韧性。我们很荣幸邀请到国内外文化遗产的学者专家，从气候变迁与永续发展目标的观点，分享国际遗产保存的视野，并且讲述运用传统智慧因应灾害的在地经验，也将特别说明我们台湾在文化资产减灾的策略。台湾位于环太平洋地震带，而且饱受地震、台风的侵袭。从1999年921大地震以来，台湾持续引进最新的技术以及观念，透过联合防灾的准备、智慧科技管理、气候监测警示等机制，我们进行了系统性跨部门、跨 跨区域的文化资产风险管理，并且定期办理紧急应变的训练，培养了文化资产的守护尖兵。而最近发生的缅甸328大地震，导致了许多珍贵遗产遭到严重的损毁。这也让我们意识到进一步完善文化资产防灾体系的重要性。我们期待透过今天的交流讲座，链接台湾的在地经验与国际视野，面对当代日益严峻的气候变迁与冲突，从灾前的预防到灾后的复原，全面强化文化资产的韧性，让珍贵的遗产能够永续的传承。再次感谢大家的参与，也预祝这次的讲座圆满成功。谢谢。
谢谢，非常感谢陈。
Thank you. Once again, we'd like to thank the Director General Chen of the Bureau of Cultural Heritage. Before we start, I would like to invite all of our guests to take a group photo online together. So now please turn on your camera. Please look into the camera and we're going to take a screenshot to capture this very special moment.
Okay. Cheese, say cheese.
Okay, cheese, everybody. Look into the camera.
Okay, 非常感谢大家的。
Thank you. Thank you for joining us together on this online gathering. So now we are going to officially start. Please allow me to first introduce the moderator of today's webinar, Professor Wang Chunxi. Professor Wang has a lot of experience and professional insights. He will be guiding us through today's program.
I'm today's moderator, Wang Chunxi, Associate Professor of the Graduate Institute of Folk Arts and Cultural Heritage at National Taipei University. First, I would like to thank the Bureau of Cultural Heritage, Minister of Culture, for inviting me to moderate today's international online seminar, Resilience Heritage, Region Local Practice and Global Perspective. Today, we will discuss how to resilience of cultural heritage in an era of increasing global climate change and various disasters, so that our precious heritage can be sustainably preserved, especially through sharing the domestic and the international experts and the scholars. We will be able to connect Taiwan's local experiences and the international perspectives and gain valuable knowledge and inspiration. Taiwan is an area that often faces natural disasters such as earthquakes and typhoons. Past disaster experience have prompted us to have a lot of operational experience in disaster prevention and recovery. At the same time, the traditional knowledge and the experience of local and indigenous people have also provided a wealth and experience for the resilient preservation of cultural heritage. This experience is not only valuable to ourselves, but can also be shared and exchanged with the international community. While sharing with our international friends, we also look forward to learning from more about the preservation strategies and the techniques from the sharing of international experts. In addition to natural disasters, threats to cultural heritage caused by human conflict have also become a focus of international attention in recent years. Cultural heritage convey the historical, artistic, and the scientific value of humanity and deserve to be protected by all of us. However, how to protect and restore cultural heritage before and after human conflict occurs has become an issue that the international cultural heritage organizations and groups have been actively addressing and calling for action on in recent years. We are very honored to invite experts and scholars from home and abroad to participate in this dialogue on the resilience of cultural heritage. And first of all, I would like to introduce Naomi Benkari and Dr. Stacy Felix. We have the first speakers is Stacy Felix. Stacy Felix is president of ICOMOS Aotearoa, New Zealand. She is member of ICOMOS Emerging Professional Working Group. And Naomi will join us a few minutes later. And here we have the two experts from Taiwan joining us today. One is Chen Tuonan, Adjunct Assistant Professor, Department of Architecture, National Quemoy University. And he is also representative of Yushou Architecture, Culture and Design Company. We have another speaker, Xu Shenfa. He is Assistant Professor of Graduate Institute of Architecture and Cultural Heritage, Taipei National University of the Art. Besides, we are pleased to have Dr. Namnu Katsal as today's panelist, who will join the panelists seminar and the discussion. Namnu Katsal, he is Assistant Professor, Department of Ethnic Relation and Culture, National Donghua University. So now we are first invite Stacy to have our presentation. Stacy, he is expert of urban design, urban and regional planning, architecture disaster response, sustainable architecture, digital heritage, climate change impacts, and adaptation. He will discuss her topic is resilient heritage, bridging local practice with global perspective from ICOMOS network in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and beyond. She will discuss insight of enhancing cultural heritage resilience from New Zealand with reference to initiatives taking place through national and international ICOMOS network. Stacy, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my slides. Okay. Just a moment. There we go. Okay. Okay, hopefully that looks good to you. Please let me know if there's any issues. But
yes, it looks very good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to join you in these important meetings. And once again, thank you to our wonderful hosts for the chance to take part. I'm currently in Seoul for some regional meetings, and Professor Yen has asked me to say hi to you all online. So hello from him as well. But to those that I have not had a chance to meet as yet, I'm Stacy, and I'm the current chair of my national chapter in New Zealand. But prior to this role, I served as a member of the board between 2021 and 2023, where I represented emerging professionals, which is a cause that is close to my heart. So this afternoon, I look forward to taking part in these meetings featuring these key topics by sharing a view from my national chapter, New Zealand, which is a small country at the bottom corner of your world map. Okay. So for my day job, I lecture at AUT in New Zealand, and with my team on screen, we research a number of topics relating to flooding, earthquakes, retrofitting, but also looking at the role of our various digital tools and technologies to enhance our urban well-being. But less about me, and now to our national chapter in New Zealand. Well, as we are all aware, climate change is a vast challenge, and that requires efforts that are developed both with our members and our partners. So to share some background, now about 2 years ago, my national chapter, we had updated our name from ICOMOS New Zealand to ICOMOS Aotearoa New Zealand. that this being the Maori name for New Zealand, as we wished to note and reflect the breadth of our cultural heritage sites that our members work with both locally and nationally. And so these range from various 19th century European masonry buildings through to our vast landscapes, all of which face multiple risks from climate change. So our national chapter was established in 1987, and we currently have around 170 members. So in New Zealand, we are nearing our 40th birthday in a few years' time. And so for us, this is a chance to think about the evolving heritage sector needs for the next 40 years as well. So this afternoon, I'd like to start with a brief view into the earthquake sequence that took place around about 10 years ago, between 2010 and 2011 in New Zealand. So in this earthquake sequence, 185 people lost their lives, and the earthquakes highlighted the major public safety risk posed by the predominant 19th and 20th century unreinforced masonry buildings that line the urban center, but also many urban centers across New Zealand. Now, the iconic church that sits in the central square has stood as a sort of reminder of the 2010 to 2011 earthquakes, but also the longer timeline of earthquakes stretching back to the 19th century that this building has withstood. So the site has been a focus both locally and nationally, and this really being around whether to move forward with its rebuilding and restoration. And these processes have been taking place for some years now, but a significant funding shortfall had halted works as of last year. So the church sits in a prominent place in the urban center, so many opinions and perspectives have been voiced by stakeholders that include the local and central government, the church groups, the public, you name it. But the point here is that this timeline can highlight the short and long-term impacts of our heritage sites at risk. So this is one example, but it points out the fact that our built and natural environment is subject to these timelines of change in response to multiple natural hazards and climate change. So along with with earthquakes, New Zealand towns, urban centers, landscapes have also been shaped by fire and flood. So in more recent times, these various natural hazards have been worsened by a changing climate, as we all know. So on the 14th of February 2023, the New Zealand government had released a national state of emergency to aid in the response to a major cyclone. At that point, it was only 3 times that this national state of emergency had been called, and each time there was an extreme threat of danger to people, but also noting the scope to overwhelm emergency services and the need to allow nationwide resources to be used. So these events were, in 2010, following the earthquake sequence that I had mentioned in the previous slides, 2020 in response to the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course here, as we see on screen, in response to the cyclone. So it's worth noting here that the cyclone also was followed by significant rainfall in the eastern parts of the country, which prolonged the impacts of the flooding. And so, as we can see, cultural heritage sites such as Maori marae or meeting houses were impacted with damage to the exterior of the buildings, but also to the precious craftsmanship and the taonga, or the treasures that we have on the inside. So some of the reports from these sites noted that our resilience as a nation has been tested by these recent climatic events, Cyclone Gabrielle is the latest, but it is unlikely to be the last. Now, at the heart of our work is our charter, as we can see on screen. And I'll point out that this is a key resource that is used in our sector by, say, local government, in district planning for heritage management, as well as by professionals. So two points that I thought I would note here are the charters. It's item 4, focused on planning for conservation, that can be read along with Article 24 on risk management. And together, these note the vulnerability of our historic buildings and sites to various types of risk. They also stress that it is key to unpack risk and to work towards developing management plans, tackling emergency situations, in response to natural hazards such as earthquakes, but also other human-induced risks, such as climate change as well. So using this charter together with other national guidelines, we are very keen for our practitioners, building owners, researchers to unpack risk management planning, to work up frameworks for managing risk and eventually actioning and reviewing the outcomes, as it's really important to reflect on the outcomes of our risk management strategies and to update them where needed as well. But what happens when we do pinpoint these cultural heritage sites at risk? How can we engage groups and the wider public to increase awareness of these risks involved, but also the role that our cultural heritage can play in responding to climate change, for example? So these various tasks are shared through our national teams, where we found that it's important to be able to bring together research and industry practice so we can call for change both within and beyond our immediate circles. So one strategy that we do use is through the at-risk program that was set up by our global networks some years ago. And this, of course, has the aims of recording, highlighting, sharing information about monument sites and places that are at risk. Along with that, the work of our policy team is focused on making formal submissions on law reviews and changes. So essentially what this means is that through our written and our oral submissions, our practitioners can give formal feedback on the advantages, but also the drawbacks of proposed changes and call for improved heritage protection as well. So one example from last year is that 4 members from a national chapter, along with myself, were invited to make oral submissions to our national MPs to highlight the overlapping cultural heritage, environmental and social impacts of a bill that was focused on various urban development projects in New Zealand. So the main message that we put forward here is that it is both feasible and vital to look after our various unique places alongside these key projects being rolled out. And so, as you can see on screen, we were not alone in our efforts, as we were one of about 500 groups invited to make oral submissions. So while the rollout of these projects does remain central to the current bill, these various or this work that we were involved with has helped prompt changes to the various processes involved. So this is a good outcome, but of course there's still work to be done. As we know, climate misinformation can be as damaging as climate change itself. And so bearing in mind the long-ranging impacts of climate change for the future, we are proud of our various programs through which we try to help raise awareness. So highlighted here are two examples from about 2 years ago, where we hosted a lecture on the role of our cultural heritage in climate action, where a key topic was in taking on learnings from the European context for application to New Zealand. And so here the aim was to look at the various sort of integrated strategies for historic building retrofit to reflect two key environmental risks for us in New Zealand, being earthquakes and climate change. So this work is also part of the work that we try to put forward through our travel scholarship that is focused on ongoing professional development, learning from various global practices. And so we've been very happy that we have been able to help a number of emerging professionals doing both research and practical skills training in these areas through the scholarship over the past few years. So I'll also take a moment to point out the work of one of our other national heritage networks in New Zealand, where specialists are on hand to help offer advice for organizations planning for various types of risk as well. So the point being here is that help is on hand. And later this year, we're very happy to be holding a joint event with one of our partners in Napier, New Zealand, that was made famous for its Art Deco rebuilding, and that was following a major earthquake back in 1931. And so here we will be looking at the role of our evolving storytelling in an era of climate change. So please do reach out if you happen to be traveling in this part of the world, as we would love to welcome you. So as we all meet here online, once again, I think it's really important to note that we are not tackling these vast challenges by ourselves. We are not alone in our cause. And so to these ends, it's been very useful to work with our close regional neighbors through the Joint Network on Risk Preparedness to tackle common challenges within our global region over the past few years. And so here some of the aims are in highlighting, protecting, managing our various sites and thinking about it before, during, and following an event. And so this is work that we hope to keep ongoing. And of course, it was wonderful to also work with our network in our global region as part of the third event in the HIA series that took place earlier this year. So as I round off, I will note some of our global networks that do also inform our national and regional work in this climate change space. So it was a pleasure to work with the climate change working group to develop the Future of Our Past report that many, I think, here will know well. A number of our national members were involved as expert reviewers for the report that was released back in around 4 years ago now. We are also working to roll out training for our heritage professionals in our national chapter and our wider heritage sector. And so last week, we found out that that 2 sites in New Zealand will be taking part as foundation sites, along with 10 globally significant sites in the upcoming 3-year program. So we very much look forward to sharing with you all the outcomes from these exchanges over this time, but focusing on how our cultural heritage practices can play a role in climate action. And of course, this program will pick up on the key themes highlighted in the Future of Our Past report. So to these ends, the role of our EPs has been a vital part of this of the work relating to climate change impacts, and the Emerging Professionals Working Group has been very active in this space over the past few years. So as some of you may know, the theme for the 18th of April, previously back now almost 7 years ago, was to support inclusive dialogue, and this has helped drive the emerging the work of the EPWG within our heritage circles and beyond. And we had a chance to share this theme at the G20 meetings in 2021, where we called for greater dialogue between diverse groups to tackle climate change. So in spite of the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the meeting that took place now about 4 years ago was another important event that helped bring different practitioners from multiple networks and backgrounds to share their views on this topic, but thinking about the linkages between cultural heritage, climate science, and climate action, where once again a number of members of the Emerging Professionals Working Group took part alongside these experts and voices of experience. So to sum up, as we know well, it's key to establish global, regional, and local partnerships across research and industry practice to drive climate action, and especially law reforms and reviews in this space. It's one thing to have all of the principles and frameworks lined up, but we also need some practical actions that we can draw on during these events. So when I had chatted with some members while pulling together the slides for this, they had put forward a few key actions that can be taken at this point in time by all of us, and one being to reach out to your local emergency services, inviting them around to view your building, seek their advice around risk measures, and help them learn more about the spatial layout of your building as well. So really, to close, it's important that we are using up-to-date tools to tackle the vast challenge of climate change. And so in this respect, ongoing learning is really central to our mission. So at that, thank you all for your time, and I will hand over.
Thank you, Stacy, and you are doing a great job and show how does climate change is in your country's charters and some response. And I think we will have discussed after our presentation. So we have our next presenter is Chen Tuonan. Chen Tuonan will present disaster preparedness and the response for Taiwan's cultural heritage. Taiwan is a region subject to frequent earthquakes and typhoons, just like the New Zealand, just the same, and has experienced numerous earthquakes over the years and have damaged cultural heritage. In order to reduce the risk of damage to cultural heritage, management, maintenance, and disaster response plays an important role. Through case study, we will explain how to implement daily observation and the recording of building and cultural properties, conduct disaster response drills, and the response to disasters. 陈拓南，请开始。
OK， 好，各位午安哦。
Good afternoon. I'm very honored to be part of this webinar. Today, I'm going to share with all of you our efforts and measures in Taiwan in terms of disaster prevention measures for cultural heritage. So this is going to be the outline of my talk. I'm going to share with you actual practices carried out by cultural heritage owners and also managers. I also have a number of case studies to share with you. In practice, how do we prevent disaster risks, hazards, especially for cultural heritage? So just like in New Zealand, in Taiwan, we also face all kinds of natural disasters, typhoons, earthquakes, and also like termites. There's also like fire hazards, all kinds of disasters that pose threats to our cultural heritage. So the government, in order to better prevent disaster, to better mitigate the consequences of disasters, our government has coordinated different agencies and resources. We have central local governments. We also work with local universities as well as cultural and historical organizations so that when a disaster occurs, we are able to respond in a timely fashion. We're able to manage and maintain the cultural heritage sites on a regular basis. We are also better able to recover post-disaster. So here, starting from 2008, the government has formed this working team. This working team supports the management agencies in better maintaining and also promoting disaster prevention measures on a regular basis. Here, there are a few key components that I would like to share with you. First of all, for all the main cultural heritage sites, the working team has developed these structures for disaster risk awareness and also related data construction information. We also want to better raise the awareness of all the staff. The second component is emergency rescue during a disaster, as well as post-disaster response and recovery. And then the third main component is the coordination of various resources, whether it's public, private, community, or volunteer resources. Starting from 2012, 2013, for all of the major cultural heritage sites in Taiwan, we have developed these disaster prevention maps and also disaster risk or hazard maps. So all of these maps must be very practical, must be readable for all the management units. Here you can see this example, all the different equipments that are in place on the cultural heritage sites, the nearby contacts, resources, and also the particular artifacts or also murals or also traditional crafts that must be preserved on this map. So usually it's in an A3 form. There will be all of the markings of these significant assets. To help the management agencies in better understanding the risks and also the hazards, the potential hazards, again, starting from 2012, 2013, we have developed these disaster and hazard masks. So here again, we have map annotations, we have images, photos, and also damage pattern markings to help these management agencies better understand the potential risks. We also have professional assessments to have a very comprehensive overview. This allows the management units to better understand the hazards that took place in the past and also potential risks in the future. In addition to single sites, we also broaden this method or approach to historical parks. For example, this is an old waterworks museum. Along this museum compound, we highlight like the fire agencies, the different surrounding resources. This is the Old Waterworks Museum in Tainan. And again, you see the map of the single building and also surrounding infrastructure. We mentioned about the disaster map, the hazard map. We also modify and keep these resources updated. In recent years, the central government has also provided more support and information. For example, microclimate information, earthquake, all kinds of disaster information. We have all incorporated the information into this disaster prevention app. In the following, I would like to share with you our measures in disaster prevention as well as this disaster response exercises and drills. Nowadays, we have identified these three main stages: daily maintenance, emergency response, and post-disaster recovery and reporting. For the daily maintenance, we have these regular maps, as I mentioned, for regular recording and also logging. And then for the disaster response, emergency response, we have organized these drills and exercises to enhance our capacity. And then in a post-disaster phase, we have these post-disaster investigation and also record building. We want to make sure that we have sufficient resources from different government entities. So this is an actual example also from Tainan. This is a very traditional temple, city god temple in the city of Tainan. City god temples, they have these traditional paintings, a lot of temple paintings, a lot of these artifacts. So we have the professional experts. They will lead the temple staff in teams to follow these practical procedures. We refer to the disaster hazard maps. We check each point on the map. So here, these are some photos that show how some of the temple structures are damaged. In Taiwan, in many of these traditional temples, some of these artifacts, they are fixed in the temple structure and some are movable. So we try to identify these different artifacts. Say that an emergency occurs, the staff through the map can immediately know how to relocate certain artifacts and what are the artifacts that cannot be moved, and you have to preserve them on site. This is the floor map that we use when we conduct these earthquake exercises. Here, this is another example of how temple staff executes these emergency plans by working with the firefighting teams and also evacuation teams. And then the third phase I mentioned about post-disaster reporting and also investigation. Here in this example, you see how the staff from these different entry points, they discuss the effect of disasters on their temple structure. Here, to better support all of these on-site staff, we have conducted these different efforts. For example, self-inspection, we have different markings at the cultural heritage. We also guide them in having like a command and control system. In recent years, a lot of our efforts have been dedicated to educational workshops for disaster prevention of cultural heritage. We want to strengthen all of the people's awareness. And then 3 years ago, we've also organized a series of heritage site management and maintenance workshop. We have practical cases to share with all the participants. We identify some common problems, and then after the classroom lectures, we bring all the participants on site to the temples so they can visually understand everything at the temples. We also incorporated the use of tools, for example, infrared thermographers. We also conduct investigation of termite damage inspection for wooden components in the temples. So these are very hands-on learnings and trainings that we have provided to our participants during the workshop. We also facilitate discussions among the participants, and in doing so, they can develop better strategies and also disaster prevention maps for these cultural heritage sites. So these are the different approaches that we have taken to strengthen the awareness. And you can see it's very diverse. All the different sites, some of them are cement, some of them are wooden structures. They have all kinds of building techniques involved. So last year, we have also broadened the scope of our trainings. We want to cover as much as possible. Finally, I would also like to share with you when a disaster occurs, in addition to self-rescue efforts, we have also been strengthening our coordination across different agencies, fire, police. We've all gathered together in these exercises and drills. We also introduce disaster prevention resources from the entire city into these cultural heritage sites. So these are photos from previous drills and exercises. We also strengthen our equipment, for example, like water hoses for spraying in case of fire. The third aspect that I would like to share with you has to do with the coordination of different resources. For example, introducing a mass amount of volunteer resources into the preservation of cultural heritage sites. This is an example in Jiayi City that has started from last year. So these are the efforts that we have developed in strengthening the understanding, awareness of risk hazards, and also how we better control and manage these risks. In the second part of my speech, I would like to share with you a different topic. This is an actual case study. So earlier I mentioned that the central government, starting from year 2008, they have strengthened coordination with the local governments and agencies. There's a consultation system built and developed to better respond to these incidents. It also provides more support for the local agencies. So when there is an incident, some kind of damage that occurs to a cultural heritage site, we have identified this entire flow or procedure. In the initial phase, what are the main contacts? Line, social media, how do we ensure very timely response and also interaction? We also have like cloud-based monitoring. The second phase is to collect all the information and then to make a decision so that the government agency who is in charge can order the immediate approach to respond to the disaster. So here, these are the photos. This is an incident, an actual incident. I mentioned about social media groups. When an earthquake occurs, we can mobilize this social media group. We can immediately exchange information on the social media group, and then we can have experts going on site to investigate and inspect. And then the second phase, how do you mark the damage points? how do you assess the total impact of a disaster on the cultural heritage? We then provide the information to the competent authority so that they can develop a kind of like damage report. When a major disaster occurs, we are able to rapidly assemble and collect all kinds of information for further decision making. So the example that I mentioned in 2016 on February 6th, there was a 6.6 earthquake at a Richter scale, 6.6 earthquake. Over 100 sites, cultural and historical sites were affected. For a large-scale disaster like this, it is important that we take swift measures and also make very prompt decisions. We want to make sure that we concentrate the resources and energy on the most needed areas. So it was a midnight earthquake. It occurred around 4 a.m. And around 6, 7 a.m., all of the team members in charge, they were already at the cultural heritage site taking photos. We followed the trainings that we have received. They took photos according to the hazard map. And that morning around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, we were already able to investigate, to decide where to allocate our resources. After one day, full day of inspection, again, it was a 4 a.m. earthquake, and we were able to dispatch 2 main teams to the most severely impacted areas. And then in the evening that day, we have the Bureau of Cultural Heritage initiate an emergency response team. That very evening, we were also able to take immediate measures, for example, strengthening the structures of the cultural heritage. So we gathered all the information in a very timely way. We have the central government agencies as well as the local ones. With all of this information, all the photos, image, we were able to assess the impact of the disaster. Here, with this homework, we can understand where to devote resources if there are further afterquakes. How do we make sure that no further damage is caused? And here you can see our follow-up measures. When an earthquake occurs for the temples in the city of Tainan, this is a very traditional temple in Taiwan, and you can see how within a very short time we were able to install these protective reinforcement cables and also structures. When a main disaster occurs, a lot of government resources are poured into the most severely affected areas. And for us, how do we also allocate resources effectively so that we can target the most important sites that are most severely affected? It is also important that on a regular basis, we cultivate these relationships and networks. So when a disaster occurs, we can respond immediately. And this is my sharing. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Professor Chen, for sharing your insights with us. Professor Chen has dedicated decades of research efforts to disaster recovery, restoration, and maintenance of cultural heritage, and we look forward to interacting with him later during the Q&A session.
Professor Xu Shengfa now is teaching in National Taipei University of Art. His research expertise is architecture history and research methods, architecture design, vernacular architecture, and Austronesian project groups. Today, his presentation is ecological adaptation of housing culture among the Dawu people of Orchid Island, Taiwan. This presentation will focus on Dawu people of Orchid Island, Taiwan, whose housing construction system serves as a model of a sustainable survival within a relative closed system and with limited material and cultural resources. As contemporary society faced the threat of extreme climate change, the question of how to coexist peacefully with nature has become a critical environment issue. The traditional ecological adaptation wisdom of the Dawu people appropriately suggests a possible solution, which is worthy of our consideration and learning. 我们请徐老师为我们做介绍。
好，谢谢主持人。
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, fellow speakers. Presentation I would like to make today is about the traditional dwelling culture of the Dawu people of Lanyu, namely the Orchid Island in Taiwan. How their dwelling culture reflects years or thousands of years of knowledge of their ancestors. There are two ways to reach the Orchid Island, either by plane or by boat. However, traditionally, or hundreds of years ago, taking a boat to the island was the only option. And the Dawu people, even till today, are still known for their maritime culture and knowledge about the traversing vast bodies of water. With limited material resources, their communities adapt to environmental challenges within a closed system, seeking sustainable ways to preserve and continue their way of life as well as dwelling culture. First, let's look at the natural environment of Lanyu, mainly the Orchid Island. Lanyu is located off the Taiwan island, about 60 kilometers off the main island. Right next to it is the Green Island. Further to the south, we have the different islands of the Philippines, for example, the Luzon Islands. Lanyu is a volcanic island in the open ocean, characterized by rugged mountains, dense forests, and an abundance of fresh water sources. And the island is too small to support large terrestrial mammals. The Formosa cicadeers or the bucking deers, these larger mammals are now found on the Lanyu Island. And it is located along the northern extension of the Rallis Line. It is home to many species with southern biogeographical origins. So it is situated right in between East Asia and Southeast Asia in terms of the biogeographical features. And strong ocean currents, and particularly the Kuroshio current, make southbound sea travel from the island especially difficult, since the current only travels north, and it is extremely strong. Therefore, traveling from the island to the south was extremely difficult, almost impossible. However, it was relatively easier for islanders from the south to take advantage of the Kuroshio current to reach the Lanyu Island. And this really explains the very unique geographical as well as Austronesian culture division seen here. And this is an island with a subtropical climate. Lanyu experiences seasonal storms, including the northeast monsoon and frequent typhoons. Typhoons often strike the island in summer. and the northeast monsoon in other seasons, created a harsh and demanding natural environment for those living on the island. Now, this really indicates that cultural interactions with the outside world are limited because Lanyu is an isolated small oceanic island with a closed system. If you compare the Dawu tribal people on Lanyu as well as the other indigenous tribes on the Taiwanese main island, as you can see in the Taiwan tribe and the Rupai tribe, over the past a couple of years, have experienced diverse transitions over the past centuries. However, Lanyu is an exception because cultural interactions with the outside world are quite limited, and it is difficult for external cultural elements to be adopted or integrated into the island. Moreover, the ecological conditions are harsh and demanding, not just for the animals, but also for people. This is an island that is often devastated by strong winds and typhoons and lack of resources. Seasonal storms, such as typhoons and monsoons, cause significant damage. Therefore, it is a quite harsh environment. And considering that land-based resources are scarce and limited, so they have to turn their attention to the ocean to obtain natural resources. About 4,000 years before the present, signs of human activity on Lanyu began to appear. So this could date back to the Middle Neolithic period. And around 800 to 700 BP, during the Iron Age, the ancestors of the Dao people arrived on the island, continuing cultural traditions from the Batanese Islands from the south. They most likely arrived at the island by taking advantage of the northbound ocean currents. And Dao people's worldview is centered around the ocean, as you can imagine, reflecting a maritime cosmology. And this is quite different from Han people or other tribes' cosmology. The original tribe of Dao people holds myths about where their people came from or the origin of the tribes. It is due to the lack of cultural interactions. They believe that the spiritual cosmos is seen as a mirror image of the human world, with deities and spirits inhabiting heavenly or subterranean realms. And for the Dao people, there is no tradition of ancestor worship. Instead, individuals are expected to take care of themselves to avoid bringing harm or inconveniences to other people. And they also believe that life is seen as inherently impermanent, and they fear evil spirits. And it is very interesting to note that the society is classless, and there is an absence from unified tribal organization, and they do not behead their enemies. There is far fewer conflicts between the members of the tribal village. And it is a very unique exception given the cultural characteristics of other tribes in Taiwan. And we could also observe that they have very clearly defined gender roles and a strong emphasis on equality between individuals and the collective. And there are in fact no tribal chiefs or formal leaders, and there are in fact no centrally unified tribal organizations, no tribal central houses, no large gathering houses for large meetings. And families are small, with property and social roles inherited through the male line. And in terms of work, it has also been observed that work is organized through labor exchange groups, collaborating in fishing teams, millet cultivation and irrigation efforts, And the structure can range from individuals to families and to fishing groups, and their canoes often have the capacity of no more than 10 people, indicating the size of the fishing group. The structure of society progresses from individuals to nuclear families, then to fishing teams, patrilineal lineages, and finally to bilateral kin groups. So how do the Dawu people make use of their natural environment? It is oceanic volcanic island, therefore seeking resources from the ocean is a strong emphasis of their daily activities. They are well known for making canoes that are able to withstand strong winds and waves. And it is easy to maneuver, shaped with pointed ends on two ends, and a wider body towards the middle. Once it's capsized by the winds, it is easier for the passengers to turn back and continue with their journey. And for the boats of the Dawu people, it is more adapted to short distance travel instead of long distance voyages. And on land, there is also a very well-developed clustered villages and farmlands as well. So I would like to show you a few chosen gathering grounds of the Dawu people. Some essential criteria will have to be met for choosing settlement locations. Given the fact that the island is volcanic in nature, flatlands are not found and very commonly. Therefore, the Dawu people have to find flat beaches as harbors. And suitable locations must allow for the easy launch and landing of the plank boats, tatala. So in the beach as harbors, the chosen location would have to be close to their clustered settlements, as well as it would have to be allowing for the easy launching and landing of the plank boats. So their entire life evolves around these gathering grounds, namely the beaches for landing and launching the plank boats. In addition to the beaches, there are other gathering grounds as well. For example, a gentle island terrain, which is used for various essential purposes, such as settlement, farmland, and burial grounds. The freshwater sources, in fact, are not so scarce as people might have imagined. The island is well supplied with fresh water and does not face water scarcity. Their buildings are designed to withstand strong winds, particularly the northeast monsoon, which is seasonal and predictable in both timing and direction, but there's also the need to endure typhoons. And because of their fear of Anido, the people of Lanyu incorporate spiritual barriers and intimidating symbols to their buildings to repel evil spirits. If you would take an aerial view of their settlements, you will see where the settlements are clustered at, and the settlements, the traditional dwelling, are actually subterranean in order to withstand strong winds. Now, I would like to briefly talk about the main architectural units and how they're arranged in a scattered layout. Now, as you can see, that these houses need to withstand winds and rain, as well as facing the ocean, in order for them to observe the activities at sea. So here I'm showing you the life cycle of Dawu people's traditional houses. And you can see, because of the needs and functions of their daily life, their traditional houses are arranged in a scattered layout, both horizontally and vertically across the terrain. Here we have Vahai, the main house, Makarang, the raised structure, and the Takaka, the veranda. So for the main house, Vahai, it serves as the space as the name suggests, for cooking, sleeping, and virtual activities. This is where most daily activities are carried out. And it is set in a semi-subterranean platform with a recessed foundation. And in fact, Baha'i, this word in indigenous language simply refers to the main house. It does not really mean that it's a truly underground house. It's only semi-subterranean. This design helps protect against typhoons and is well adapted to local conditions. So once you take a few steps into the house, and once you reach the recessed foundation, and you will see a fairly large semi-subterranean platform housing all the daily necessities. And then we have the makaran. It is a raised structure used for daily tasks, living activities, and storage. It is very functional rather than sacred, and its design allows it to withstand or simply be sacrificed to typhoon damage. It offers convenience for daily life and serves as an observatory. And it's a practice ground for construction techniques as well. Therefore, at the makaran, or the raised structure, many daily tasks, living activities, and storage functions are carried out. And because it is so functional and its design is such that it could be sacrificed to typhoon damage, and the new one can be constructed easily. And its design is modular. Components are constructed from short pieces, reflecting a conscious economy of material and efficient use of resources. As we can see in this photo, here is the launching ground for the plank canoe, and there is the boathouse and for storing boats and the fishing tools. Finally, I would like to end by introducing the life cycle of the Dao people's traditional houses. After a child is born, in the semi-subterranean house, and the child grows up and eventually gets married. And this couple would then proceed with building their own house. Their house would start as a very simple structure, and as time goes by and resources are required, this house may evolve into a two-door main house plus a takaka. And then as time goes by and more wealth is accumulated, it may turn into a two-door main house plus the takaka and the makaran. Then they will eventually evolve into a four-door structure or a five-door structure. And at each and every stage of the house's evolution, a ceremony is held. And as you could see in this diagram, how this house eventually expands from two-door to four-door to five-door, although a five-door structure is relatively rare. Upon death, the house is dismantled, and the land and building materials are redistributed to the villages. And the process involves the accumulation of social status, the reproduction of societal roles, and the system of mutual sharing and giving back. Lanyi is a maritime island where the surface culture has been shaped by the Dao people, an Austronesian maritime cultural group that has inhabited the island for generations. Their remarkable ecological wisdom demonstrates an extraordinary capacity for adapting to their environment. Lanyi stands as a vivid example of the quote-unquote island effect in its most local embedded form. It preserves some of Taiwan's most significant maritime cultural heritage and is deserving of national attention and protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xu. A lot of local wisdom accumulated in the island of Lanyu is indeed a response and also adjustment to the local environments. Later on, we really look forward to a further discussion with Professor Xu. Now we'd like to invite our last speaker of the day, Professor Naima Benkari. Are you online now? Professor Naima Benkari. Dr. Naima, are you with us now? We know that you've got, we can see you online. Dr. Naima, make sure that you switch to the English channel. Great. Yeah, we see that.
Hi. Hi. Yes.
Hello,
Nice to meet you.
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm very glad to be part of this meeting. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Okay. So now I will introduce Dr. Naima. Dr. Naima is associate professor in civil architecture engineer department, Sultan Qaboos University, Oman. And today, her presentation is resilient urban heritage as a model of post-conflict and disaster recovery. Lesson from the millionary cities of Mzab. And in this presentation, Dr. Naima Bangari will focus on the theme of resilient heritage. She will present insight from her newly published book chapter on the Mzab Valley World Heritage Site, established post-conflict to shelter sequestered communities. This site's example, resilient heritage. Dr. Bangari will explore its significance in post-conflict setting and its relevance for contemporary refugee settlements in the Arab region. Naima, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And as I said, I'm very honored to be part of this celebration of the International Day for Monuments and Sites with your institutes and organizations. I'd like some help to go on with the projection. Yeah, thank you very much. So what I'm going to present today is about the millenary cities of Wadi Mzab, which represent a millenary urban and architectural heritage that has been listed on World Heritage Site since 1982 under the criteria 2, 3, and 5. These cities and their architecture have been the center of interest since several decades now, but the look and the approach I suggest to have in the present talk is somewhat new, since it aims to explore the process of their formation by what we would call today groups of ethnic and religious minority, which have been displaced from their initial lands by a ruthless armed conflict. So the World Heritage Site of the Mzab Valley is the result of resilience of this population and the continuity of their civilization in an arid and inhospitable land that they transformed through time and through their local wisdom that they took with them into a flourishing conglomeration of 7 unique cities in the Algerian desert, occupying an area of around 665 hectares. Next, please. My talk will be articulated around these 8 points. After the introduction, I will speak a little bit about who are these Islamic religious minority called the Ibadis, and I will speak a little bit about this school of thought in Islam. Then I will introduce the urban civilization, how it progressed and flourished in the Mzab Valley. I'll explain the social, political, and religious structures. Then I will address the regulations and principles that govern the development and management of the built environment in the Mzab Valley. And I will explore some aspects of this urban organization in the Mzab cities. And I will end with some lessons that we can draw from the Mzab Valley experience. Next, please. So this meeting that we are taking part to is about the ways to connect with heritage and how to promote it as a legacy, as a foundation to build upon one's identity after or in conjunction with armed conflict or natural hazards. Heritage is also a common source of information and a place where to look for past experiences and tap into these to build skills and develop approaches to address the challenges of the present. This is even more valid when we speak of a World Heritage Site like ours, which is supposed to have an outstanding universal value, which means it can be learned, or we can learn from it from different cultures as well. My look to the urban civilization of the Mzab Valley today takes the perspective of exploring the process through which a Muslim Ibadi community of refugees has been chased out from its land and cities, and how this community has settled in a different and much inhospitable geography to hide and defend its existence, then develop its own civilization, which this civilization that reached us today after more than 1,000 years later. The cities of Mzab did not only survive and remain as the habitat of the Ibadis until today, but they incarnate and represent refined examples of what we know as garden cities, also Ville Nouvelle, the new cities, which have been developed through very well structured participatory planning process, which we will explore in the next slides. The cities of Mzab could even be equated to the time-based or urbanism, such as the recent buzzed concepts that we all heard of or read about, which is La Ville du Quart d'Heure or the 15 minutes city. So without neglecting innovative frame farming that they initiated, an irrigation system that also the Ibadi initiated in the Mzab Valley, and even the concept of circular economy can be found in this millenary civilization of the Mzab. In this talk, I look at the cities of Mzab from the perspective of community-centered urbanism, where the community is in fact composed of refugees. The objective is to open a debate on how refugees after armed conflict can take control of their destiny and develop their own built environment that fits to their immediate needs, to be protected, of course, but also to fulfill their as important needs, which is human dignity, cultural identity, and rapid independence from humanitarian aids. My approach today to the urban civilization of Mzab resonates with the core of the aims of the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals, especially in the needs of displaced people due to armed conflicts and the identity loss that follows such dramatic displacement, almost systematically, as explained in the different presentations in this meeting. Next, please. So in their great respect for tradition and their uncompromising religious conservatism, the Mozabites, these are the population that we know today because they took the name of the land where they settled. The Valley of Mzab gave the name to the people who live there. They are known as the Mozabites. These Mozabites of Ibadi school of thought, Islamic school of thought, were able to create their cities and preserve their authentic architecture. Their urban organization and their art of building are impressive as much by their perfect adequacy to the spiritual and material needs of the inhabitants as by their continuity during more than 1,000 years. So who are the builders of this urban civilization that is on the World Heritage List since 1982? Before settling in this area of the Wadi Mzab or the Valley of Mzab, the Ibadis of the Maghrib, the North African Ibadis, were united under the banner of a very powerful state called the Rostomid state for more than 150 years. This was in the 8th century of our era. They had succeeded in creating a real Ibadi state in North Africa, politically independent, and the first nucleus of this state that was located in Basra, Iraq. But they maintained very strong diplomatic and scholarly ties with the Ibadis of Basra in Iraq and other centers of Ibadism in the Arabian Peninsula. But they settled in the Mzab in North Africa in a state in a city called Tahart, and they could develop an independence from the eastern side of the state. Next, please. So in the second half of the 8th century and the first half of the 9th of our era correspond to the period when the Ibadism experienced its greatest expansion, as you can see in the map, among the Berber tribes of North Africa. At its peak, the Ibadi state of the Rostomid, whose boundaries are still unclear until now, stretched from Tilmesen, currently in Algeria, to Tripoli, currently in Libya, and to the south of Tunisia, passing by Tahart, a city in Algeria, Sersu, also in Algeria, and the oases of Wadrigh, Wargla, and Touggourt, all of them in the actual Algeria. In 909, Tahart, the capital of the Rostomid, as well as the whole Ibadi country in northern Africa, were conquered by the armies of the General Abdullah Shi'i, the founder of the powerful Fatimid state, on the ruins of the Rostomid in Algeria, Aghlabid in Tunisia, and Midrarid states. And this was, next please. And this was really the end of the Rostomid, and this was the beginning of the Ibadis' travel southward to protect themselves. So they first moved to the oasis of Wargla that welcomed the greatest number of Ibadi refugees who came to follow their imam or their religious leader. These Ibadis gathered in Isidratan or Sidrata, ruled by the last Rostomid imam or ruler, who established an imama of defense, of difa, to protect themselves, which did not last long because of the repercussions and the attacks of the Fatimids against them. And due to its weakness, the imamat was dismantled and replaced. So the political organization of the Ibadi imama was dismantled, and it was replaced by a council of representatives called al-akabir, or the wise people, let's say. In the 11th century, already the Ibadi imamat muted to a state of secret kitman under a tutelage of this organization that took now the name of Majlis al-Azaba or Azaba Council. This council composed of elected Ibadi scholars, religious scholars from this community, and this started their settlement in the Mzab. Next, please. So in the 11th century, the Ibadis moved from the Sadrata and Wadirigh, and they began their new settlements along the Mzab Valley. And the Mzab Valley, the Mzab is a wadi, it's called a wadi or a river, but in the desert, the wadi is most of the time dry. So we can see only the bed of the wadi, we don't see the water. Of course, during the rain, the seasonal rains, the wadi would have water running along it, but most of the year it is dry, and nevertheless, it keeps the name of wadi or river. So the Ibadis settled along this valley of Wadi Mzab, not in places that were absolutely without any settlement, but there were previous settlements of some nomadic tribes from the tribe of the Zenata, who had another religious Islamic religious school of thought called the Mu'tazilism. So they started to link some connections. First of all, commercial connections, and then afterwards they adopted them. The Mu'tazili Zenata tribes adopted the Ibadis coming from the north to settle in their land and work together to develop this civilization. And this was the state, or this is the early beginning of the cities of Mzab. Next, please. So who are these Ibadis? Just to give a short description, they are from an Islamic school of thought, madhab. Its main principles of this school of thought consist in the observance of the Islamic precepts as introduced by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the respect of equality between all community members, and most importantly, a democratic ruling system based on the shura and with no regard to the ethnic origins of Muslims. The Ibadis who urbanized the Mzab region were already great city builders, because in their history, we can come to this if you want in the discussion, through their history and under the Rustamid Imamat, they had built really very flourishing and very sophisticated architecture and urbanism in Tahart in the north. So they built Tahart and Sadrata and also other great cities, ornate with palaces and gardens. But when they moved, or when they muted into secret state and went to the south, they wanted to remain low profile, if you want, and this made the religiosity supersede the civilization or the urban sophistication. And they built their cities in somehow a new way. Next, please. So this is an example of, on the right-hand side, it's an example of an ornate niche of mihrab that we found in Sidrata, and it is in the Museum of Algiers now. One of the early French explorers who studied the civilization of Mzab, maintains that the constitution of the city was not for the Ibadi of Mzab the result of chance. It wasn't by chance that these cities emerged. It was carefully thought out, deliberated, and then carried out. This operation took on a mystical and military form, which could recall the method of, he refers to the ancient religious orders of France. And this was Marcel Mercier who wrote the first book, actually anthropologic book, about the Valley of Mzab in 1932. Next, please. So this highlights, his description highlights how the religious and social organization has affected the way the cities of Mzab were built. So any settlement established by the Ibadi community while in its state of Kitman is a judicious balance between almost always preponderant religious power. So there is a religious power of the Mashayikh or the Council of Azaba, and the parallel power of representatives of the Ibadi people, the normal people, who are represented also by their, let's say, it's not non-religious, but non-scholar Ibadi representative. Most of the time, it is the religious which supersedes the decisions in terms of how the community should live in this area. Next, please. So, as I said, we have two parallel powers. We have the religious power led by the scholars, the Council of Azaba, and we have the let's say, mundane power represented by the representative of the people, and they are in parallel. But when the decision is conflicting, it's always the religious system or the religious council that has its way through the final decision to be taken in the everyday life and in the construction decision, in building principles and so on. And even in the there is a female side to the Azaba of the Council of Azaba, or the Council of Scholars, Ibadi scholars. There is a female counterpart called the Timsiridins, who are the ladies scholars, who are also managing and leading the life of females, Ibadi females in the valley of Mzab. And of course, there are other components like the students or the Irwan, who are learning the rituals and laws and the regulation, the religious regulations, and some of them would be elected to form the Council of Azaba. So it's the source of regeneration of this council. And at a lowest part or a lowest level is the Imsorda, or the small students, the young students. And these are all the children of the Ibadis who would go through this first step to learn the principles of the religion, the principle of the school of thought, and then some of them would decide to stay in the cycle of the religious clerics, or to go to the mundane section, or as traders or administrative and so on. Next, please. In parallel, the social organization is actually a reflection of the different scales that exist in the city. So there is the extended family as the nucleus, which is hosted in a space called a dar, or the house. And then the conglomeration of several extended families is called al-ashira. Socially is al-ashira, but also they have spaces where they can meet. It's common meeting spaces within the city. Then a conglomeration of several ashirat or ashair would form al-qabila, or the tribe, and also it is represented in the city that is also called al-Qasr, but let's call it the city of Mzab. And at the highest level is al-Arsh. Al-Arsh is a group of qaba'il, group of tribes, and each, as I said, we have 7 cities in this model. Each city is composed or is represented, or the Arsh is represented in each city. Next, please. So we spoke the next, please. Next, please. So these are the different level. We reached Al-Arsh that represent Al-Qasr. Next, please. Yeah, so this is in a way a sketch that represents the profile of the cities, because we will see in the pictures the 7 cities are built on at the highest level of the valley, so that they are not flooded when during the rain season, when the Wadi is flowing with water. So they are on mounds. They are built on mounds in a circular, concentric manner. So this profile that you see is a profile of the city, or Al-Qasr, and you see it's a schematic representation. What I was talking about, it was first of all developed by an architect who studied a lot the Mzab and who played a great role in listing these cities on the World Heritage List, called André Ravero. who passed away a couple of years ago, not that long ago. And he explains in this diagram how the whole city is governed by the Halqat al-Azaba, or the religious council that you see on the top. And then you have the two parallel organizations. On the left-hand side is the religious organization, and on the right-hand side, you have the civil organization. Or is it the other way around? It's the other way around, I'm sorry. So so let's correct. On the right-hand side is the religious organization, and on the left-hand side is the civil organization. So this civil organization, as I said, at the very bottom, you have the extended families conglomeration called Ashira, and then a group of conglomeration are represented or form what we call a qabila or tribe, and then a group of tribes would form al-arsh, which will form on the top al-qasr, the big organization. Parallel to that, we have the different level of scholars, and on the top of all of them is the religious council or the group of azaba, who are guiding the progress or the life of the city. So the group or the side of civil organization, if we call it this way, is executing the orders of the religious organization. Next, please. And of course, how we know all this, it is because the Ibadis, like Muslim scholars since the beginning of Islam, write a lot. And I referred in my research for this to understand this organization, and especially to understand how this organization is managing the construction and the organization of the cities. There are several books. The earliest version or the earliest book referring to how the city should be organized goes back to the 7th century, if I'm not mistaken, to the 7th century of our era, which means 100 years only after the beginning of Islam. And of course, they were inherited. These books or these rules were inherited from a generation of scholar to the other. Another characteristic of the collective thoughts of this school of thought that is the Ibadism is that, as I said, it started in the eastern, in the peninsula, in Arabian Peninsula, with Yemen, then Oman, then Iraq, and then from Iraq they moved to northern Africa, occupying Libya, Tunisia, and Algeria, the actual terms. So the scholars kept very strong relationship between the East and the West of the Islamic world, which means that even today, the scholars, the Ibadi scholars of Algeria, for example, would refer to the books that were written by the scholars of Oman or the scholars of Yemen, and vice versa. The scholars of Oman would refer to the books that were written by the scholars of Algeria. So at the level of the school of thought and the reflections and the scientific background, this community remained linked to each other, even if it evolved physically. It evolved in very independent, different areas, and nowadays different countries. Next, please. So this is what I wanted is to explain. I hope it's a little bit clear how the social and the religious organization is working in the Mzab Valley and how it worked to generate these 7 cities. So now the settlement. So the Ibadis, as I said, wanted a defensive place, not far from water, so that they can build their cities. And it was the best choice would be along the Wadi of Mzab, even if it was compared to Tahart or compared to Sidrata, their previous cities. it was a very arid and dry area, very inhospitable compared to these two cities in the north. So they built their cities, as I said, on these mounds along the Wadi, and they left the bed of the Wadi and the closer lands to it as their economic resources through agriculture. And because water is very scarce, they developed a very sophisticated water system that also has been listed on the World Heritage List to collect the rainwater under reservoirs, underground reservoirs, and then distribute it later on to irrigate their lands. So one of the reasons why the civilization or the cities of Wadi Mzab have been listed as World Heritage Site is this ability that they had to create artificial oases. It's the first artificial oasis built by humans in a desert. It's not a natural oasis. They started from scratch. Next, please. So, and to start it from scratch, as I said, they had to plan their work, leaving the fertile or the soil where near the bed of the wadi with very fine lime, with organic residues, helping the growth of the trees, the palm trees, and the rocky sides would be used to build their houses and their cities upon it. Next, please. And this is how these cities look like. So you have on the top the minaret of the unified mosque in the center of the city, and the rest of the city is growing in concentric circles around it, occupying the whole slope and almost a circular city. So how it works is, if we very quickly, I will explain how it works, is that in the center is the mosque, and it is the place where Muslims, Ibadi included, would go 5 times a day from dawn to the night. And the expansion of each city should not go beyond a certain time, and hence why I mentioned that we could equate the cities of Mzab to the 15-minute city, because it was also timed. The expansion of the city was timed so that the person who lives in the very furthest house from the mosque would have the time from hearing the call for prayer, would have the time to prepare himself and go by walk to the center, to the mosque, to attend the collective prayer. If the city needs to expand beyond this time, this distance, there is a need to build another city. And that's how the first city being Al-Atf, so the first city that they settled in, when it expanded to this maximum, a second city was decided, then a third city, then a fourth city, then a fifth city, then the two last ones. Just to give you an idea of the time, the first city was built in around the 11th century of our era, and the last two cities were finished around the 17th or 18th century of our era. So they spent 7 centuries to build these 7 cities of the Mzab. So the mosque is the most important building, and it is the first building to be established because it will host the first community, the community of scholars who would lead later on the development of the city. So it is not only the sanctuary and the center of government, but it is also it's the place where arms, weapons, and food are stored. It's the military headquarters. It was the military headquarters, the administrative center, because nothing around has been done yet. So they start with the mosque. And in order to protect the early construction, the city wall has to be erected just after the mosque. But when the city extends, we will see that the wall will be pushed further and further. Next, please. So once the mosque is built and the city wall is defined, there are the city is divided to host the different tribes and neighborhoods, and it would evolve as we see here in concentric centers, in concentric circles, with very narrow streets and so on, as we know from the Islamic city. I'll try to go faster on this part. I don't know how long do I have more?
Yes, Naima, because the time we have, maybe we have 5 minutes left, please.
Okay, I will wrap up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So these are the major principles, the mosque at the center, as you can see, and then the houses. And this is how, the next, please. Yes, next. So we see how in plan and in the real image, how the city is organized. Next, please. This is the different expansions that each city would see or would witness until it reaches the maximum of expansion. Next, please. Next, please. So these are the different cities in the right-hand side. Yeah, next. So if we go to go to the conclusion, or to the what we can learn from this, what I have presented, is that to have a coherent and resilient organization after a natural hazard or an armed conflict is, first of all, to have a coherent social organization and a clear leadership to whom the community can identify and can follow, and also to understand what are the driving of this community. For instance, the example of the Ibadis, it was the religious driving that was leading them, and because they followed or the leading group, the Azaba Council, followed these principles, the community found itself well guided, and they could establish their cities, their new cities, wherever they could have been. Next, please. Yes, next, please. Next. All here I'm explaining how the city is organized, or the qasr is organized. The economic. So we have, first of all, the driving of the community. For the case of the Ibadis, it was the religion led by the Council of Azaba. Then we have the economic aspect. A community cannot survive without economy, and for the Ibadis, it was the commerce and the trading. So the marketplace is a very important place. So for any community, there has to be, if you want it to be resilient and survive, it should be economically independent and make its own resources. So the trading. Next, please. The defense, to satisfy the need of being protected. And here in the Mzab, where the watchtowers and the surrounding walls. Next, please. Of course, the organization, the cycle of humans is from birth to death. And for the Mozabi and Muslim in general, the Ibadis and Muslim in general, the dead person has also his or her dignity. So the cemeteries were surrounding the cities for people to keep their memory and to keep their attachment to their ancestors. Next, please. And they developed, this is a very specific case for the Ibadis, they developed the mosques of the cemeteries. We can come back to those, and there is a lot to say about that. Next, please. And the oasis is the other source of economy. As I said, they were the first ones to establish artificial oases through their irrigation system. It is the second source of economy, which is agriculture. Next, please. And this is the development of the Mzab Valley today, where the same community remained, simply because we see in the Arab region, not all, but most of the traditional and 1,000 years long cities are being abandoned to go to new cities, much more modern, etc. But the case of the Mzab is quite peculiar because the community remained there. So the descendants of the builders of this civilization and these 7 cities are still living in the Mzab, and they are maintaining it, of course, with more or less conflict with the agriculture and the invasion of modernity. But yet, compared to other regions, this community kept and preserved their heritage because the same religious and spiritual leadership still remains until nowadays. And the children, they are brought through learning the history, how they came to live in this place, and the importance of preserving this place. And I consider this is a very important aspect to protect heritage, is to learn or to teach it to as young as possible, and to explain the logic how it came to be, so that the younger generation can appreciate it and can identify to it and can preserve it. And I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naima. And I think the traditional leading system is what the key point in the Mzab city, and further when we facing the disasters. Okay. Now we have time. We will. Okay, now we have moved to today's panel discussion, and we invited speakers and panelists to join the dialogue and change ideas. We hope this session will bridge local and global perspective and uncover opportunity for future collaboration. 我想我们欢迎线上的观众在脸书和 YouTube 频道呢留言区提出问题。
To share questions or opinions in the comment sections on Facebook and YouTube live streams. We will invite our speakers to respond. If we do not have time for our speakers to respond, we could ask them to get back to you via emails after the conference has concluded. Also joining us today are a professor, also from Taiwan. He is Lameru Kakao from the Department of Ethnic Relations and Culture's National Donor. Will also be joining the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be able to join the panel discussion today. Today we've gathered here to talk about enhancing resilience of cultural heritage in face of climate change and man-made disasters. Today, we have heard excellent presentations from our invited speakers. Cultural heritage is not just a distant memory, it is a living representation of the human resilience and wisdom. It also is a symbolism of a community's continuity, evolution, and rebirth. I major in geography and cultural anthropology. I will provide some of my thoughts from my personal research. I also have worked in the cultural heritage sector, particularly the operation and maintenance and the management of cultural heritage sites in Eastern Taiwan. I am of indigenous lineage as well. I am from the Amis tribe. And so I have been sort of at the forefront of all the different indigenous cultural heritage movements. In order to respond briefly to the presentations today, I would like to share a few slides. Could you see my slides?
有听到声音吗？栏目录。
目前有声音吗？
Did you see my slide? Yes, we could see your slides. I would like to talk about the Chihala'ai cultural landscape, which is a subject of my study for years. It is located in the Hualien County in eastern Taiwan. The name Chihala'ai, in fact, refers to a indigenous salamander. And one of the most important assets within this landscape is this terrace fields dedicated to the cultivation of paddy rice. And there is also a very intricate network of canals for the purpose of irrigation. All these ditches and canals are still in frequent use today, forming a culturally rich landscape that is still being used by the indigenous people in eastern Taiwan to this day. These photos show you how the indigenous people are still practicing their traditional way of farming on this in this landscape that has lasted for centuries. And it is a landscape that blends the human activities as well as the natural elements, allowing different species to live in harmony. However, given the increasing severity of the impact of climate change, the indigenous people here also have to adapt to the increasingly severe extreme weather events. During my conversation with them, I noticed that they have come up with very creative solutions based on group discussion, which really underpins the functions of the indigenous community. Their leadership style can be characterized as a collective leadership. We heard from the last presentation that NZAPS is led by a strong religion-based leadership and participatory governance. And Professor Chen, in his presentation, talked about public-private partnerships and the importance of involving the local communities, volunteer groups, and using disaster prevention maps in order to connect different risk mitigation and post-disaster efforts. And lastly, in Professor Xu's presentation, he talked about the collaboration groups, the labor or work division between men and women that really form the cornerstone of the Da'u tribes' prosperity. And in Ms. Stacy Valley's presentation, she talked about collaboration on a greater scale. For example, regional cooperation, the exchange of knowledge and experiences among different countries, international partnerships and collaboration, the alignment of different countries' laws and regulations. All these examples point us to a very clear path, which is a mechanism for collaboration on multiple scales. And this is also reflected in the Chile High's leadership organization. Here I'm showing you the Cultural Landscapes Management Organization. You can see how the local tribal people have formed different groups, working groups, voluntarily to form a very intricate organization to maintain and manage the existing indigenous cultural heritage. And they have come up with their own management rules that is implemented and abided by all members of the indigenous community. So this really highlights the importance of local participation and community engagement. And here we see that people are gathering to discuss the management of irrigation canals. They gather at least once a year to discuss what changes are necessary here. There is even a very detailed log as to who is in charge of what aspects of the irrigation management, the change of leadership, everyone's duties and responsibilities are delineated in such a logbook. So when unexpected events or disasters happen, everybody will immediately take on his or her own assigned responsibility, and urgent action can be taken immediately. So all these examples show us the importance of having the right resources as well as the right leadership and organization for the sustainable development of cultural heritage maintenance plan. We also have talked about the importance of local knowledge and how it would influence the development of cultural heritage resilience. In the example of MZAP's cities development, the Naima talked about the concentric circles and how disaster prevention and mitigation functions are built into that geometric circle, including the religious center in the middle, and very compact and efficient deployment of the blocks of the streets, as well as the different disaster prevention plans. And in Stacy's presentation, she talked about the climate change, the climate action working group, how they have organized the platform to integrate everyone's knowledge and experience for addressing climate change challenges. And she also showed the power of creating synergy through such a collaborative platform. And Professor Xu talked about the traditional dwelling and the maritime culture and other local types of local knowledge of the Da'u tribe in Lanyu, and how traditional knowledge could be then turned into ecological adaptability, enhancing the resilience of the Da'u people today. And this also resonates with what we have observed at the Chilaya cultural landscape. For example, all these intricate designs for maintaining the irrigation system have been passed down through generations. And in addition to using concrete or permanent infrastructure to manage water resources, which are often irreversible and could potentially cause harm to the local natural and ecological environment, we see that this indigenous community is using temporary makeshift methods, for example, these sandbags for disaster prevention purposes. 2 minutes, you have 2 minutes left. Here are more photos to demonstrate the exchange and passing down of traditional indigenous skills and knowledge. For example, pest management of the farm and friendly agricultural farming techniques have all been passed down through generations. And here I want to talk about social communication and education. And I think in the case of MZAB, culture is being used as a medium of healing, reconciliation, and rebirth, or the revitalization of the local communities. And in the case of New Zealand, the speaker talked about youth engagement and participation in particularly cultural heritage climate action initiatives. And Professor Chen talked about disaster prevention and response drills and the important part of social and public communication. And Professor Xu talked about the uniqueness and ecological wisdom of the Da'u traditional dwelling and how that's shared with the general public on the island. And I would like to end with how social communication, public engagement is also a very core task at the landscape, the cultural landscape of Chilaya. And I would like to end with some questions, if you will, for Dr. Binkari. Based on your sharing of the case of the MZAP region, how can participatory governance and its associated norms inform legal and policy recommendations? Given, and for other countries currently facing conflict or risks associated with disasters. Second question is for Dr. Stace Valleys. From the perspective of the future community lab, how do you view the potential of integrating traditional knowledge with emerging technological strategies in order to enhance the resilience of cultural heritage? And for Professor Chen, here's my question. You have shared many examples of disaster prevention drills and emergency response initiatives in the field of cultural heritage. What are the specific methods or practices that you have observed that can be really feasible and adaptable to other sites, to sites around Taiwan? And for Professor Xu, you have talked about the Dao people's dwelling culture and the social organization. What kind of inspirations does the Dao people's ecological adaptation for to all of us? Thank you. Thank you.
So in the interest of time, we're going to invite Professor Xu first to answer your question. So here, just to quickly respond to the question. So for the Dao people, the traditional building knowledge has given us one insight. Adapting to the natural environment, there is no quick solution. We need to take time to observe changes in nature. And then we use accessible materials in the nature to try to coexist in harmony with nature. And that is why for these houses in the Orchid Island, you can see where they are built. Very often they are in these hillside areas. And when they are damaged, they are able to quickly repair them with local materials. So here, you will have to be able to maintain these traditional knowledge to pass down these techniques. And when a disaster occurs, you're able to mitigate, you're able to recover rapidly. And then within a shorter time, people can return to their normal lives. We're able to mitigate the impact of the disaster, but you cannot solve everything. In other words, you cannot think that human can gain victory over nature. This is often a common misconception, but this is something that we have to constantly remind ourselves. And this is what we can learn from the indigenous people. Humans are part of nature. Nature will bring these threats and these destructions, but it also gives us opportunities. And that is why we need to adapt and to make good use of these surroundings. Thank you. I'd like to thank Professor Xu for the response. Stacy, 你听得到吗？
Stacy, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So can you? It's okay for you for reply the asking from our panelists.
Sure. My thoughts here would be that the various digital tools and technologies that we have are only as good as the inputs that we feed them. And so in that way, I think it's really important for us to be able to draw on the diverse skills and the knowledge that our members of our various organizations bring, and use these together with our various tools and technologies to cope with these vast challenges of climate change. So I think the lived experience of people is very vital, and that's of course the next challenge that we need to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. And for Dr. Naima? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much.
Yes, okay. And are you, yeah. So are you ready for reply the question from our panelists?
Yes. Thank you very much for the question and for the summary that we listened to. The professor really brought all the insights of the different presentations all together in one case, and this confirms the idea that humans are all the same wherever the geography is. Maybe we are different in our look or our languages, in our cultures, but the essence of humans is all the same. And especially we learn that and we rediscover that in the indigenous knowledge, the local wisdom, that the solutions that were found in a geographic area are practically, at least the philosophy or the approach is exactly the same wherever you are. To answer the question regarding my presentation and regarding the participatory approach, especially for regions where there is armed conflict and there are people who are displaced and needed to leave their places and to build a new life. I think that it's worthless to take the same system and applying it somewhere else. I would say that the idea is to explore the DNA that generated this system for this particular case and try to understand how it would work in the case that we are addressing. And this takes us back to understanding who is this community. Where did it come from? What was its history, its civilization? What are their beliefs? What are the mending or the connecting ideas that bring this community together, and start building on that with their input. They might have left their cities, but they brought their memories with it. So the idea is to explore this memory of the place, this importance of the different places, the meaning of architectural elements or forms, and try to build along with this community together, build a new life in a new place if there is a need for that. I think it's very important that, especially for refugees who have fled because of armed conflict or because of natural hazards, is to give them their dignity back, even if they left their homeland, is to strengthen this dignity and to comfort this pride of what they are and build on that to generate something new. Thank you.
Thank you, Naima. I think the refugees and the memory of their original town is the It's important when we are recovering after the disaster. It's a very important thing, and that's also some cases in Taiwan and after the landslide and the typhoon in the same situation. 我想最后会请陈拓南老师针对刚刚我们。
Lastly, would like to invite Professor Chen to respond to the questions.
这个我想刚刚我的说明其实可以了解说。
From my presentation, you can understand that my main role is to support these frontline agencies in mitigating disaster-related risks and impacts, and also on disaster reduction. From my presentation, I also share with you that we have a diverse array of cultural heritage sites. They come from the Dutch era, the Japanese period, modern architecture, Han Chinese. There are these single buildings, structures. There are also larger parks and sites. So there's great diversity. But we only have limited talent. We don't have talent in every single site. We might not have sufficient human resources. So here, the government in Taiwan, we are trying to provide support, consultation services. We have also introduced community and also volunteer support. We have so many different kinds of cultural heritage sites. How do we make sure that the disaster scenarios are very realistic? How do we make sure that the solutions are very practical? These are questions that we are constantly thinking about. And then the talent, the proficiency, the professional skills that they need. These are very important questions. In my team, we have professionals in engineering, in preservation, in history, in architecture. People have diverse professions and expertise, and in doing so, we can develop more comprehensive assessment of disaster-related damage or destructions, for example. So when we want to scale it up, we think about how to make sure that different sites can benefit from the resources. We also think about how to attract more young people in these preservation and also educational efforts. We're talking about works at different level. Are you talking about an ethnic community, a society, a nation? And then for single cultural heritage sites, we want to equip them with basic skills. They have a certain level of awareness. And this is what we're trying to achieve at the very front line on the ground, developing their awareness in disaster prevention. And this is what I'd like to share. So thank you, Professor Chen, for your sharing.
I want to wrap up some keywords of our presentation. During the resilience, I think a community and a cooperation is a first important thing. And from the community and the cooperation, we should raise awareness and of climate change and even the idea of resilience of cultural heritage. Besides, we need a good practice and the preparedness. With the preparedness and the others by other peoples, we have a good cultural heritage resilience system, and the system from the traditional community is one of the what we learned from other cases. I think so now it is the end of our webinar. 我们感谢大家今天的发表跟讨论。好，那接下来我们就把时间交回给。
谢谢今天的讲
Professor Lai for the ending. We'd like to thank all of you, all the experts and scholars for your excellent insights in sharing what it means of resilient heritage to all of you, bringing in all your local practices. Here we have a QR code as a questionnaire. If you have any feedbacks or comments, please let us know so that we can organize better webinars and also events for you in the future. We also have online programs. So today's webinar will be edited. We will also be posting it, uploading it on Annie's official website. If you're interested in learning more about these subjects, feel free to visit our website. Here, I would like to conclude our seminar. Thank you all and see you soon. Thank you.